So let's get started with this journal with me class. So today we are talking about lessons learned from love. If you have never read Alexander Solomon's book, Loving Bravely, I absolutely recommend it. And we're going to talk a little bit about that today. So, welcome. I'm really glad that you're here. Today is a journal with me session, which means there's no pressure to arrive with any answers, clarity, or even language yet. You do not have to perform insight. You do not have to write something profound. We are here to notice. We are here to learn gently from love. Love teaches us constantly, but rarely loudly. Most of love's lessons arrive in moments of reactions and discomfort and longing or closeness, especially when we feel stirred, unsettled, and unsure. So today we are here to just take notice of that. And we're here to learn gently from that love. Today's reflection is inspired by the book Loving Bravely, a book that names something many of us feel but rarely say out loud. So you don't have to be in a relationship to be in this class today. It's not necessarily all about romantic relationships and that kind of love. It is any kind of love. I think that February is a celebration of all love is self-love. And when you really think about it, that it always comes from within. The way that we learn to love, the way that we're capable of love, the way that we receive love, that all comes from self-love. So that's part of what this journal with me today is going to be and what that prompt is going to be. So, we're going to talk about our reactions in love and how they're often not about the present moment at all, and what intimacy has meant to us before, where we have learned it from. We're going to talk a little bit about those past memories, the people who have been examples to us, and then we'll journal for a minute. So, one of the most powerful ideas in the Loving Bravely book is this. She says, we are not reacting to love. We are reacting to what love has taught us to expect. So I want to start with something foundational. Think about the people who raised you. Doesn't necessarily have to be your parents, like the people who are examples to you. This can be teachers. This can be movies. This is anybody in your life that was really pivotal to you. So think about any sort of caregiver, important person who raised you, not with blame, but to start to excavate some of the things that we have learned about love. We're just going to observe, right? So ask yourself, what did the adults in your life show you about the space between stimulus and response? So you may think, like, what does that have to do with love? Right? But it shows up in how they love as well. So how they fight, how they deal with a difficult day, how they deal with something that has surprised them, how communication happened, regular or difficult, how it happened around the dinner table, how it happened in the evenings just sitting on the couch, or was it through letter writing? Was it through separation? Was it always going into another room? Was it slamming doors? Was it taking it all inward? What were these representations of communication in your life? And then also think about the examples that you really, really enjoyed, the things that you were just like, I want that in my life. If it was a book, if it was a movie, if it were older siblings who were getting married before you or in relationships before you, or if you were the eldest in your family or an only child, what were your examples of the thing that you wanted in life when you saw people together? So think about all of that right now. And if you want to, you can drop into the chat and share some of what you're thinking about. And that will be helpful with me going in a direction that will serve you. But yeah, ask yourself, when people around you were upset or irritated or overwhelmed or angry, did they pause? Did they explode? Did they withdraw? Did they become sarcastic and joking? Did they shut down? Did they punish and project? Did they try and make it disappear in some way? I had Like, my parents weren't exactly my example of love. So that right there is an example of it doesn't have to be the people when you think the people that raised you, it doesn't always have to be parents. So I am the youngest. I am so far the youngest, like caboose baby, that I have like 5 sets of parents in my mind, right? So I've got 3 siblings and I've got my 2 parents, and my 3 siblings all were married by the time I was 12. So to me, I had 5 sets of parents all of the time. So I had a lot of examples in love and caregiving and what I thought love was. I also had, the movies that I enjoyed, the things that I identified with, those like strong, powerful women in movies, but also the like romance movies, often someone who was a writer, like How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days kind of thing, like the person who stays. Like, that was my example of love in movies and in life. It was like, "Oh, all love ever needs to be is someone who stays." Which, yes, that's absolutely a great thing to look for, but it's not the only thing to look for, right? And that's some of the things that we're gonna observe today. When it comes to love and my parents, I told myself that they were best friends. They seemed like it. And to me, holding hands on the couch, having quiet nights, watching TV, having routine looked like love to me. But I think I learned a lot more love from my siblings getting married and dating, 'cause I was so young when all of this was happening, and often they had to babysit me while they were dating, so I went on all these dates with them all of the time. I was like the 3rd wheel to the dating life of everybody in my family. So I got a lot of examples of love in that way of, there's those belief systems, the traditional, "Oh, like, the man pays." There's things like that. Total belief system may or may not serve you depending who you are and where you are in life. And there's things like, um, talking late into the night, having many things to talk about. So these are kind of some of the expectations I went to in my life as I started to build my own understanding of love. So these are the kind of things that I want you to think about. Because long before we had language, we learned that emotions were a part of our lives. Emotions were a part of every relationship. So before we could even talk, we could feel, right? English is the second language for all of us in that sense. Like, our first language is feeling. Even if you believe today that you don't feel or aren't capable of feelings, we are all reacting to those initial wordless years of our life. So these early lessons quietly shape how safe it feels to speak once we do start having words, how close we allow ourselves to get to other people, how we do or don't like to be touched, if it's safe or not, how we handle conflict, and how we protect ourselves when love feels uncertain. None of this makes you broken. It just makes you trained. And guess what? When you're trained, you can train a different direction. You can change it. You can totally change what it is that you've been raised with. So moving from reactivity to intimacy is kind of that connection that we're going to start making today. And we've been building on it throughout the month. So we're going to be talking more about it each week. And this weekend, for anyone, whether you're a BMO journaler or not, this weekend we have a workshop. There are still some tickets left at bmojournal.com/events. And we're talking about using the funk method for conflict, for conversation, for talk therapy, for knowing what to say in difficult situations, for knowing what to say in situations that you just want bravery. Maybe it's not difficult. Maybe you just want to be kind to someone. So we're going to talk about using that funk method format to practice your voice, to regain that power. So I invite you to come. Please be there. Tickets are available. It will be the absolute best. We will be both journaling and speaking together. Yes, Gail, absolutely. Help with conflict. It's so nice. One of the most difficult parts of conflict is how do I say what I need to say and keep from spiraling and keep from forgetting? And if you're like me, half the reason you spiral is because you're worried in the back and forth that you're gonna forget what you have to say and share, and you want to get it all out now. So having that, using the funk method as a format is priceless because you get to practice it, you get to regulate before you even get into a difficult conversation. Yes, or fall into people pleasing. Yes. people pleasing and fawning a situation, just being like, "Yeah, yeah, okay, yeah, you're right, you're right, you're right." You know what I mean? Like, it is so easy. So we're gonna talk about staying in your power and showing up already regulated rather than showing up ready for a fight. And yes, it takes practice, but it takes less practice than you would think. So we're gonna talk about that. And I would love for you to come, Gail, and I would totally use you as a guinea pig and be like, "Let's talk through something." Let's have a back and forth funk conversation, so that will be the best. And yes, fawning has been like, I was always fight or flight, like fight it out or completely leave. Um, but as really interesting as my healing journey arced, not only did I go through all attachment styles before I landed in secure, I also went through the stress responses. I stopped fighting, I stopped flighting. I eventually got to the point where fawn was my go-to. And it's all just an example of like what our impression of what secure is always going to be the opposite of where we are, and a little bit of back and forth. And so you kind of have this experience of going into different stress responses that are not your own and then coming full circle to the middle. So absolutely. I look forward to seeing you there. I would love to see you there, Gail. So, to continue, another question from Loving Bravely that matters deeply here is this. When you feel reactivity in intimacy, when you feel triggered, anxious, distant, or overwhelmed, what does that feeling remind you of? Like, where is that coming from? Not logically, but emotionally. Yes. Yes, love that in the chat, Gail. We are going to do that. Just let me know. Just drop me an email and we'll do some group sessions for you. So yeah, when you're in that triggered and anxious and distant and overwhelmed state, whatever your go-to is, what does that remind you of emotionally? What other stories in your life does it remind you of? Who does it remind you of from the past? Who else in your life acted that way? So when was the first time you remember feeling that way? And who from your past related to you in a way that feels familiar to how you are doing this right now, how you are reacting? Someone close to you, who else was like this? And that can be hard to connect to because you often don't want to feel like or be like the person that is kind of manifesting in those moments. And so you kind of double down on guilt and then you double up on reaction. But I want you to do that in a safe space using your BMO practice if you do have a BMO journal, working through that funk of how you're learning this, where this came from. So this is not about blaming. It's about recognizing. It's about pattern and memory. That's why it's reaction. We're moving into interaction. Love often activates old learning because intimacy asks us to be seen. And even, this is the complicated part, even when our desire is to be seen, to be heard, and to be known, when we are seen, when we are heard, it can make us very, very reactive. It feels unsafe because it's unfamiliar. So that's just more personal prompting there. If you identify with that, absolutely write about it, write through it, work through that funk, everything that you identify with. That's your homework, right? That's the thing to work on. Although I hate referring to it as homework. So, finding the feelings behind the feeling. This is where we slow it down. Instead of asking, what should I do with this feeling? We ask, what is this feeling trying to tell me? What information is it delivering to me at this moment? Is it trying to tell me who I am? No, because you know you want to be different. You know that you're kind. You know that you love this person. You know. So it's not trying to tell you who you are. What information is it trying to give you about the wound that exists? I did a video yesterday about how your attachment attraction equals your wound. And why that happens is you tend to get into relationships that you do have a sense of control over in order to control the relationships that you didn't have control over growing up. That's a whole different class. We can get into that later. We can talk more about that in the workshop this weekend. So ask yourself, what is this feeling trying to tell me? And loving bravely reminds us to find the feeling behind the feeling. So if all you can access right now is anger, stay with the anger. Anger is not a bad emotion. Anger is a movement emotion. Having anger issues with somebody else is something that's not gonna serve anybody, but when you yourself are experiencing anger, it's okay to sit with that. It's okay to work through the funk of that, to hear out what that energy is trying to get you out of. So breathe with it. Anger is rarely the full story, it is often the protector. Ask yourself gently, where do I feel this in my body? What does it feel like? Tight or hot or heavy or buzzing or empty? What message is that carrying and why? Where does it come from? And if you don't know, this is going to sound tricky. If you don't know, write about it. Write what you don't know. And that's going to sound like, how on earth do I do that? But as you start on the page to tell the story of what you're carrying and where it comes from, and you start to just cycle and recycle and put the spiral that you've been experiencing on the page before it becomes part of you, you're going to unearth something that you do actually know. Give it time, give it space. Anger often protects us. It often protects us from slipping into further sadness or depression. It's protecting us from fear or grief or longing. The need for safety or reassurance is at the root of that. So if you're trying to unearth a story that you don't even know where it's coming from or who it's coming from, or why love is so difficult, why giving or receiving love is so difficult, what is the part of it that is unsafe? What is the part of it that lacks reassurance? Where's that unmet need coming from? Who is it coming from? How deep does it go? Because it'll go deeper than your relationships that you're actually in right now, whether that be a friendship or a partnership or a significant other. This is the same with all types of relationships. So your curiosity holds healing power. You do not need to solve the feeling to listen to it. We're never here to solve the feeling. We're here to show up for the need that we identify. So we're going to reframe what love is showing you. Here's something I want to say clearly because many of us need to hear it. If you make a brave choice in love to speak, to feel, to be honest, you deserve a compassionate response. If you're met with anything less than care, that response does not define you. It doesn't have anything to do with you, no matter what you're talking about, even if you're talking about you. No matter if you've been together for 2 minutes or 20 years or 40 years, it's not actually about you. Even if the other person is saying you, it's not actually about you. So if you're met with anything less than a compassionate response, remember that does not define you. It gives you information. But also remember, when you get through your funk method, when you land on your knowing, that even if things are difficult, even if someone else is going through their healing journey, even if someone else is trying to find their voice and their words, you can know that you love them and you hold space for them. You can give them that space to arrive and learn how to be compassionate and to respond to you differently. Also, you can arrive at knowing that you absolutely don't deserve this and that you're done with it and you're moving on. What you know comes from you, it comes from within, and only you can know these things. Only you can know where you're still holding space, where someone else is trying, where compassion will arrive, versus, I don't deserve this. And we can talk more about that. That is something that you can bring to the workshop this weekend, and we can funk through that together. So it gives you information about the safety of the relationship, the other person's capacity, what they're going through, where they are in their healing journey, and the kind of care available there. But that does not mean it's about you. Doesn't mean it's about the capacity for them to care about you. It's their capacity to care in general. That is their journey. You stick to your own. And that is why, and we'll go through this more this weekend, that is why we meet our own needs, and the needs that we receive from others are gifts, not expectations, absolute gifts. So this is not judgment. This is just data. This is just information. Love teaches us not just how to connect, but where it is safe to do so. So now we write, not to fix anything, not to decide anything, but to listen more deeply to what love has already been teaching you. You can write in full sentences, you can write in fragments, you can make it a list, you can pause and breathe. All of it counts, however you're arriving today. Yes, Gail. The workshop this weekend is, well, it's about the funk method. So it's love and needs working through conflict. So it's the ability to speak to how you feel and what you need in conflict and all kinds of, like a conflict with a boss, a conflict with a relationship. So yeah, it's all about that. And that's the one this weekend, Gail. So, some of you arrived just in time for our writing session. So, we're going to spend the next 10 minutes. I'm going to hold that space for the journal with me. And we're going to begin here. The prompt for today is: Today I am noticing that love has taught me. So, I want you to really think about going back full circle to what we talked about in the beginning. Who in your life, people, other relationships, movies, who in your life did you look at as when you were young and say, "That's what I want. That's what love is. That's it. That's what I need." And sometimes it's the opposite. Sometimes you look at something and you're like, "I want the opposite of that," right? Like, so I want you to really think about those examples of where you learned love, where you learned that love is routine. Love is sitting on a couch every Friday night with popcorn. Love is gifts, maybe, or love is fighting often. That's something that I have heard. Love is fighting through and fighting all the time, or love maybe is never having a fight. Maybe love is sharing a room. Love is having two separate rooms. Whatever it is that you have experienced, I want you to really go through that and notice that and ask yourself and write through what love has taught you, what you've learned about it, where you learned it from. So you can begin with: Today I'm noticing that love has taught me, and then move gently through these other prompts. I'm going to ask you more questions to go deeper. So you can begin writing. I'm going to give you a little bit more to spark where it is that you're going, and then we're going to hold that space for a few minutes. So, what did the people who raised me show me about how emotions are handled in relationships? Do we talk through them? Are we kind? Are we loud? Do we hold it to ourselves? Is it all my fault? How did the people around you exemplify working through in conversation and communicating in love and relationships? The next question to reflect on is: When I feel reactive in intimacy today, what does this feeling remind me of from my past? And not necessarily your relationships in the past, but the relationships that you've witnessed in the past. The next question after that you can go deeper with and reflect on is: Who from my past did I learn closeness from? And what did closeness require? What does that mean? How do I define that in my life? Is closeness, is it cuddling? Is it cleaning the house for somebody? Is it giving space? I know that sounds weird. To be close means to give space, but really think about what comes to mind for that. Another version of this question is: What feeling is underneath the feeling I notice most right now? So, how is love making you feel in the moment? Is it really uncomfortable to be thinking about this, to be working through this? Is it making you itchy? Is it making you want to scroll, to leave, to do something else? Because that's not about how boring this is. That's about how you feel about the feeling that you're having. So stick with it. Stick with it and ask yourself, why does this feel uncomfortable? Why do I want to work against this? Or why does this feel heavy and sad? And Why do I wanna get to the bottom of this? That's the same. That's still part of your prompting, your personal journey here, part of what you should add to your prompt, your flow, and then work through with your funk. Another question is, if my anger, sadness, or withdrawal had a message, what does it want me to know? And don't worry, I will post all of these questions with the recording, which will be available for 24 hours before it goes to members only. So you will be able to use these questions even deeper if you want to keep going with this. Another question is, what does this reaction protect? What do I believe that this feeling is protecting me from? Because feelings are often just giving us information, pointing to what it is that we're trying to protect from. And therefore, we try to change our feelings, but that's not what we're doing here. That's not what the BMO practice is all about. Because if we try to change the feeling, then we're just driving more triggers. We're doubling down. We're creating bigger reactions. We're going further into ourselves. We're bigger. What we're doing is we're sitting with the feeling. We're learning not to be triggered by it. We're learning to glean information from it, to flow with it, to identify it, and then use it as information. Use the story that we're flowing to identify that core need and create a plan from there. That's what the funk method does. You don't have to be a part of the BMO community or understand what the BMO practice is or funk method is to get started with this. But if you're curious, we do go through it in our actual workshops, which right now are once a month, and you can join the one on Sunday. Last question here is, what does love seem to be asking me to learn? Not about others, but about myself. So, how easily do you love? And then, how easily do you take love back? Or how easily do you hold on to love before you give it? What is that balance? What is that requirement? Where does that come from? Where are you building safety? Are you building safety right at the door? Right at the doorway, like, you don't get this from me yet? Or are you giving it so freely, and then the minute you're disappointed, you built that safety? You have that stress response. How often do you do that in other situations, in all types of relationships? So I want you to really kind of sit with these things and write about it. Just free write. It doesn't have to be pretty. It doesn't have to look good. It doesn't have to be all about the same story. Just blurt it all out there. Put it all on the page. And if it's coming with difficulty, give it time. Just tell a story, the story that comes to mind about love, right? So I'm gonna hold space for a few minutes. Hopefully you've been writing as I've been talking about those questions. And we're going to write together about that love, about that story of love. And if you want to ask any questions or share in the chat, feel free to. I'm going to write with you and let me know what you need. I'll let you know when we're done with a few minutes of writing through, and by all means, you can continue to write. In these workshops, we don't do the whole guided BMO session. So we don't do the working through every step of funk and landing on purposeful positives. You can use your own BMO journal to work through this prompt on your own. And I encourage you to do it all in one flow and not in separate chunks of time if that is available to you. But if you do want to work through the entire guided BMO journaling practice, make sure to grab your ticket for this Sunday. And that's tickets are on the event page at bmojournal.com.
So it's been about 10 extra minutes there. You can continue writing if you want to continue writing. There is no wrong way to approach these questions. What comes up for you is your practice. Your practice is what you need right now. So, for those of you familiar with the BMO practice, when you're done with your flow, I want you to work through the funk. I want you to identify, I feel. Never say I am. Identify, I feel. Move into a letter of self compassion. Really show up with see, hear, and know yourself. Give yourself what you're not used to giving. Show up as that best friend. Identify the core need. Use the needs guide, the needs wheel in front of your journal in order to identify what that core need is. Then make a list of how you can show up for that need. Ground yourself in what you know that is an absolute truth. It's not a limitation. It's not a belief. It is an absolute truth. It is more than an affirmation. It is something that you know. You know it because. And what you know, while absolute true, is not always easy to know, but it does always pave the path forward. Maybe it's something that you unearthed today about what you believe about love, about what you know about the examples of love in your life. And then to ground yourself even further, land in those purposeful positives. Come back to the present. Use your five senses. Be grateful. Use your gratitude and your I get to. Really place yourself back in the room with what's going on right now and those positive glimmers. How the weather is outside, something you're looking forward to. Really just bring it back. So that's a quick rundown of how you can move through the rest of this. So I'm just going to read you a little bit of mine so that you have an example of how this flowed, especially, again, it doesn't have to be the direction that you take with it, but just if you need a little of encouragement or something to give you a little spark of moving differently in your flow. So I just wrote that love looks like routine in my life, in my past, a clean home and an earned cheat meal. It feels like protection. In my life, I have looked for someone to save me because being saved equaled being loved. Love was confusing. I couldn't decipher being used or taken advantage of from being appreciated. This changed how I feel in my body and about my body. This assured me, I think that's what I wrote there, that this turned me into a human doing rather than a human being, looking through for love through validation and building resentment for all the responsibility I carried. Love looks like someone who can take it, who can be verbally abused and yelled at without reaction or blame. I learned this from my father and then from my mom. But that is not the love that I want. It's the love that happened to me and around me. It looked like flowers and to-do lists and fancy meals and overdoing and overeating and thoughtfulness and abandonment and surprises and socks and jewelry, but never listening, never truly knowing or hearing. I once told someone after 10 years of dating that all I ever wanted was the nights we read books together in bed. I let the rest of it happen. I didn't want the rest. For far too long, I thought I could give away boundaries as gifts, and now I know keeping them is the greatest love of all. So thank you for joining me today. I know that it's been a crazy morning for many of us. I know it's been a crazy morning for me, and I was totally out of sorts, but I hope that we were still able to prove that even in the middle of chaos and stress, that you can come back to regulation and that you can work on these things. And you can work on the moment and you can move through. You can move through the funk. So when you're finished moving through your funk and your positives, I want you to take a deep breath. I want you to just breathe it out. Breathe in the need that you've chosen for yourself and breathe out what you're letting go of. This weekend's workshop, as Gail is asking about here in the comments, it is a 2-hour guided journaling session. It's similar to this, but it goes all 2 hours. So I teach all about it. We have a conversation about it. There's collaboration, and then we do some journaling and we'll do some talking. And there will be a lot more space held for a lot deeper topics. And it'll be in Mountain time zone. So I believe it starts at 10:30 in the morning Mountain time this Sunday, the 15th. So, through this practice today, you don't need to draw any conclusions. You don't need to decide anything about relationships or love. You don't need to take any actions. You don't ever need to. I'm very, very against need toing yourself. You do not need to know what this means or what happens next. Learning from love is not about getting it right, it is about staying present long enough to understand. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being willing to listen and to hold the space with me and journal with me today. And thank you for meeting yourself bravely on the page. Again, this will be available for recording for about 24 hours before it goes to the private membership community. So if you want to grab the deep dive into that prompt and those questions, you will receive that in email as long as you're subscribed here to this Substack. And I look forward to talking to many of you this weekend at the full 2-hour guided journaling session where we will actually move through the BMO practice. You'll learn more about it, and we will learn how to speak through funk. We will learn how to speak our feelings and our needs in conflicts or when we're just trying to be brave. And I will be back here next Wednesday as well for another live. So thank you. I'll see you later.